So if someone comes on, you can just pull them on, right?
Yes.
Okay, then let's start recording.
Great. And I'll mute everybody until until you stop for questions.
Okay. So say when.
Okay.
Good morning. This is a webinar on the Chariot and Strength, and it's presented by Margot Whitney, myself. And we will begin with the Chariot. And the Chariot is key 7. And I call this key the victory card. It's about your inner self, and the Charioteer is in charge. The key clearly states that all that you must do to be the Charioteer, which is great. This is what we're going to cover, how to be your inner self. And your inner self is eternally victorious in the great game of life. The shield on the front of the Chariot represents protection. It's the Indian lingam yoni, a symbol of union of the positive and negative forces and the generating power of the universe. Not so bad to have that as the shield on the front of your chariot. Above the lingam yoni is a blue-winged globe depicting the Egyptian sun god Ra, the spiritual mind carried aloft by wings of inspiration. Key 7, the Chariot, is the last key of the first row of the Tarot Tableau. And there you can see a picture of the Tarot Tableau, which is all the cards lined up in 3 rows with the Fool card on top. But in reality, the Fool card is everywhere in between all of the other cards. Key 7 is considered the summary of all of the keys of the row. So the first key, as we will now reiterate each key, the first key of the row that is the Magician, key number 1. This has to do with self-consciousness and directive power. High Priestess, key number 2, has to do with memory and the all-inclusive aspect of the subconscious mind. Key number 3 is the Empress, and that has to do with the power of active imagination seated in the subconscious mind. Key number 4 is the Emperor, our ability to constitute our lives in a fashion that is acceptable to the law of life. And if you recall, the term to constitute is like creating a constitution, just like we did in the Constitution of the United States of America. The Teacher, key number 5, relates to our intuitive faculty. And then the 6th key, the Lovers, has to do with keen discrimination needed to unscramble all the different factors that are dynamically interacting in ourselves. This key has to do with the middle way, not extremes. So the Charioteer is the way of the self, which is yourself and myself. And this is in the middle, the place of mastery. The self is the master in you and me. The self is not different from us. There's this old idea that God is up there and you're down here, and God is great and you are nothing. You feel a kind of dualism inside yourself. The trouble with this outer doctrine is it doesn't work for anybody. None of that exists. So many of the great religions run this by their constituents, but it is not real. So here we have the self is the Charioteer. We are reminded by him that we are the sons and daughters of the Most High. We are made in the image of God. We meet here not as bodies, but as spirits. You may recall that Jesus always said, My Father wishes to be worshipped in spirit. It is the spirit or self in each of us that makes us interesting to each other, because each of us comes through the personality that's created and the body and vehicle of the chariot. The self is the charioteer, the triumphant rider in the vehicle of personality. Receptivity and will are attributed to key 7, the chariot. Receptivity is suggested by the magician's gesture. Our support comes from within. If you'll notice, his right arm is raised, and his wand is directing up, which in our case we always remember means inner, and he's drawing power through this wand, which is hollow. So there's a recognition of a higher force. Once we get the message, we can exert the will. So once we receive what we need to do, then we go about our business. The tarot looks upon will as being in no sense a personal faculty. Will is not something that strong-minded people possess. Will is not something that timid people are devoid of. It is a living, motivating power behind the entire universe. Every person and thing in the universe has an equal share in it. Differences between persons is not the degree of willpower as a possession. The difference is the degree of our ability to express this power through our personalities. And that's why we do this card. Learn out how to do that. So in key 7, we're going to talk about some of the symbols and colors. The number 7 symbolizes equilibrium, the concrete laws of symmetry and reciprocation. It means mastery, poise, rest, conquest, peace, safety, security, art, and victory. The Hebrew letter Cheth stands for a field or fence. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner of the card, I've indicated there's this tiny little round thing right above the letter Chet in Hebrew, Cheth, and it looks like a little circle right below the symbol for Cancer. Both meanings, field and or fence, imply enclosure. The master or cultivator of this field of personality is the true I am, or inner self. This implies that the personality can be cultivated. The personality's value to man, it's the instrument of his spiritual progress. Speech is a function of this key. Enclosing a thought with words, building a fence around it. The yellow background indicates thought, which precedes speech. So you'll see that most of the card has yellow in the background. So all of this is about setting parameters, understanding how to create your personality. As I mentioned earlier, the sign of Cancer is the astrological sign of this card. It is a water sign ruled by the moon and is related to this key in regarding protection by the mother aspect. There are 2 half moons on his shoulders. And remember the High Priestess key, you can see here, key number 2, with all of its lunar symbology. The crescents show receptivity, and 2 of them relates to rhythm, cycle, and repetition. And you can see they're on the crown of the High Priestess. 2 also signifies polarities, 2 extremes of one idea. So all of this is on the Chariot Key. And now you can see on his shoulders the 2 lunars, crescents. The blue stream of consciousness from the High Priestess is behind the Chariot, going by. This permits growth in his field of consciousness. So you see water and trees growing and the grass. The chariot rests on a field of green. If we recall, this is the color of love, Venus, and the Empress key number 3. The Empress key, of course, is filled with everything that is green and growing and healthy and multiplying and represents the subconscious mind. So his chariot rests on this. It's a foundation. Venus represented by the brass of his breastplate. This provides the protective power of creative imagination and love. So this is needed to develop your personality. The cypress trees in the background remind us of the Empress. Gold on his neckline and ornaments means he uses solar forces. So the imagery is here. I'm explaining it because it's what supports the philosophy behind the card. He is driving this chariot with invisible reins of mind control. The stone chariot represents the physical body or outer level. The sphinxes symbolize the senses and the desire nature on the emotional level. The black sphinx is saying, I don't like, and the white sphinx says, I like. These polarized forces use the same energy in opposite directions. And we are learning on this card how to overcome this basic being dragged about by our desires, which is a problem that's discussed in this card. You notice, though, that the two sphinxes are very quiet. They're just sitting there quietly. He's got them under full control through his mind. So you look at his left hand. So the I like, I don't like, I like, I don't like. How many times have we heard ourselves say this? Something to think about. So we have to learn how to drive our vehicle. His left hand is holding invisible reins of mind control. The mind is the means of controlling everything in your life. If you're unconscious, this arrangement isn't going to work for you. When the mind is turned to the self, it knows what it wants. Otherwise, it chases whatever comes along. The art of driving your vehicle is like any other art. In the beginning, the rewards are meager. As your understanding improves, so do your hearing, seeing, and other senses. So here we will discuss his belt and his scepter, the crown on his head, and the Grail cup. The Charioteer's belt indicates time and the zodiac in the slanted circle of the ecliptic. And we all have talked about that with the card, the Fool. And the Fool's belt does the same thing. It represents time. So he's wearing it. So he's here. He's coming in. He's strapped on time, and he's coming into manifestation. His scepter combines a lunar crescent with a solar figure 8. And we talk, whenever we mention the solar figure 8, we have to remind ourselves that it stands for infinity or eternity. Because if you put your pen down and draw it, you don't ever have to lift your pen. It's a continuous figure. So it's used regarding that symbology. His dominion results from a blend of their powers, from the solar and the lunar. The development of will using solar and lunar forces has already been brought down and solidified into a vehicle. That's the stone vehicle. His crown has 3 golden pentagrams, signifying mental dominion over natural forces. And let's recall that a pentagram stands for the figure of man, the five, the five elements and the quintessence at the top. And if you recall on the magician's table, the five-pointed star is on the coin, and this stands for man's superiority over the elements, his dominion over natural forces. The Grail cup in the upper left-hand corner denotes his function of receptivity and using his will and the gift of transmutation. So cup, if you always recall, stands for receptivity because you can pour something into it. So this signifies the lifting of your consciousness to partake of the spiritual life. It's brought in by the dove of peace. And it reminds us about the transmutation of elements into higher rates of vibration. To transmute means to change or alter in form, appearance, or nature, a change of physical form, structure, or substance. It's times like this when I think of we are just atoms flying through space, gathered together by our mind. And all the atoms can be transformed into various elements and various structures. And if you return to the source, in your mind, and you take the same atoms and you transform them to anything you wish. And this is the transformation, the gift of transmutation. You go back to the source, and then you come out with something different. And all of this in the tarot is learning how to do this. The Chariot. The Charioteer's body is in the cube. This represents the physical universe. His head is in the upper part. In tarot, upper means within, in the cosmos, where it belongs. His canopy of stars indicates the presence of the High Priestess. The four pillars that support his canopy are each ringed with the one spirit in the form of the four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. So you look at the pillars, and there's a circle around each one. It's all the same circle, though. Under his crown is a wreath of green leaves. We've seen this before in other characters in the first row, and we've also seen it on the Fool card. Green leaves of plants actually do bind sunlight, just as they bind his hair. They capture sunbeams and bind them into organic form, and this is the principal work of chlorophyll, the green coloring matter of plants. So don't forget to eat your greens. All that sunlight that you're eating transformed into you. The wheels are orange. This is the color of solar energy. The whirlwinds of fire in the vision of Ezekiel are remind us of this, and they represent the orbits of the planets. So it moves, this chariot moves on solar energy, the energy of the sun. Yes, the wonderful energy of the sun. The chariot is on the other side of the river from the city, the river, the stream of consciousness. He's in a different place. The other shore is a metaphor for emancipation. We've left the city. It represents the complex race thought, the thing we must analyze and overcome. So it's just a representation. You can live in the city, quote unquote, physically, but this is where your consciousness is now. The city is real. Real beings live there. And the red rooftops signify the activity of the city. But to apprehend the one reality, we must remove ourselves from distractions. Some find that developing a practice of meditation, say once a day or twice a day, allows us this time away from the material world and takes us to the world of spirit, where we lay down all our hobbies and work and tasks and physical things that we've created, the myriad things that surround us, and we go within to that quiet place of light, sunlight, to the quiet place of the sun. So this is a figure who's done that. He can move through the city or around it and be undisturbed by all the activity. The square on his chest with the 3 black T's, so you see that little square, express the limiting power of Saturn, because Tav is that T, and he's got 3 of them. The 8 folds of his skirt with talismanic symbols show dominion over the terrestrial forces. This means we must discriminate between reaction and motivation. The Kabbalah teaches that you never get rid of your desire. This is not a bad thing. The Charioteer is able to look at desire and see what's going on. That's the good thing. To actually see clearly from the point of view of the inner self. When you know what's going on, you are no longer a victim of it. You're calm. The life comes and goes all around you, but you're functioning from the self. And you have to make that connection by being quiet, by being without distraction, any kind of material distraction. At that point, you are free of karma. Karma is desire nature reacting to what's in your memory bank over and over and over again. The memory bank is limitless. As long as it works automatically, it goes on forever. I mean, I'm sure we've each had times when we thought, I thought I got that out of my mind. I thought I let go of that. Why am I thinking about that again? Is that my thinking? Is that someone else's thinking? Why am I still hashing something out, which I made a decision about ages ago? And there it is again, the past, coming up again. So, wisdom is our salvation. It is here life reflects upon itself. Part of the illusion is the idea that we can possess anything. We can't. We can enjoy everything, but we can't possess anything because it isn't ours in the first place. The Charioteer. Wild horses, everyone. The Kabbalah says the mind moves the body. Win, lose, or draw. We've got to learn to drive this thing. The Charioteer scepter is a combination of the moon and Lemniscate, infinity, figure 8. When the subconscious, the means of achieving everything, is teamed up with the higher aspect of self-consciousness, direction and discipline are the result. The Bhagavad Gita says, the self is the rider in the chariot of the body, of which the senses are the horses and the mind the reins. This is where you can see that East meets West, that there's nothing new under the sun on the great spiritual path, that everything that's developed in the Kabbalah has also been developed by the yogis. So this is the end of the card, the Charioteer. If anybody has questions now, or hold them, and we'll continue on and move on to the next card, Strength. So let me know.
Yeah, you're unmuted if you have a question.
Otherwise, we can move on. And what's going to be interesting is Strength is going to explain the use of the subconscious mind that we've touched on here in the Charioteer. So it's great that these two cards are together in the same webinar. So shall we move on?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So here we have key 8, Strength. It's also kind of cool that it's the 8th key. And so, once again, you see the symbology of eternity is actually the number of the card. With key 8, we begin the second row of the Tarot Tableau. The second row of keys represents the agencies whereby the principles, symbolized by the keys in the first row, are carried into operation. So now we've just discussed 7 different principles over the last several weeks. And now the second row is going to explain what the operation is that's needed to manifest those principles. The results will be the third row in the Tarot Tableau, which we will get to in several weeks, in a couple of months. Key 8 represents the agency that is the means for expressing the principle of attention as expressed by the magician in key 1. And that agency is suggestion. Here we have the magician. The subconscious mind is always amenable to control by suggestion. This is a very important statement in your life. This is something you need to know and remember. And I'm going to discuss each word of that statement and define it. Key 8 illustrates this law and how to use it so that you may take advantage of its operation. The force concentrated by attention, see the magician key number 1 to your left, is carried into manifestation by means of suggestion and used for the modification of external conditions in your life. This is called How to Change Your Life. And there is a way to do it, but it has to be understood, and it's very subtle. So let's define these 3 terms so that we're on the same page as to their meaning. Amenable. This is defined, I looked it up in the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So we could have something of the same definition, and we'll go from there. So amenable means answerable, subject to taking responsibility. Compliant, a disposition to yield, submissive. So, according to this definition, whenever the subconscious falls short in its work, you can call it into account. You're not doing your job. You can be on top of the subconscious mind. It's subject to your authority willingly and is easily led. This is not a tricky business. Once you know how to do it, whatever you can think of, it immediately creates for you. Gee, we wish we had more people that would do that for us, don't we? Control. To control any force is to exercise a directing or restraining influence over it. Suppose we want health. Subconsciousness carries on all the bodybuilding work. We all know the subconscious level. Your heart beats, you breathe. The metabolism runs on its own, blood flows through your veins. You're not out there inside directing traffic. Blood, go left. Blood, go right. No, this is all under the control of the subconscious mind. So our concern is not with processes, but the outcome. This is a very important phrase. Therefore, your conscious work ends when you have formulated a clear, distinct image of the result that you desire. So the conscious work is you directing the subconscious mind, which you don't see. It's all underground. Then you turn it over to the subconscious mind in such a way that it will be acted upon. Well, that is the tricky part of this business. Be careful to not have any doubt or anxious thoughts or feelings about the results. The subconscious mind will then immediately begin to create the fear pattern it has just now received. Emotion is as vital as the image you initially created. This is like getting the directions at the time of birth. You wish they'd handed them out then. Things would be a whole lot easier the rest of your life. Suggestion. So, an act of suggesting. So the dictionary says it's an act of suggesting. So I moved on to the terms to suggest, the verb, which is to put as a thought or plan or desire into a person's mind. Gee, that seems to fit here. To remind or evoke by association of ideas. A suggestion is a hint, which connotes subtlety. An effective suggestion is indirect. Subconsciousness more readily responds to what is implied than to what is explicitly affirmed, stated, or commanded. Things like, heal me now, doesn't work as well. Subconscious reasoning is deductive. So I put a little chart over there that deductive reasoning, you come out with a general, and then you end up with specific. You don't have to coerce the subconsciousness. You do have to acquire the art of gently intimating what you want done. This is really important. The responsibility for right direction rests on you. So this is a very different thing than just demanding, etc. It's subtle. To continue, what you do and think all day long is recorded in your subconsciousness. Yes, remember the Empress. She's sitting on a bench that's all very fancy, and she's surrounded by all those green trees, and it just grows, and she's pregnant. It's just like continuous growth. A perfectly conceived suggestion of health will fail if it is contradicted by hundreds of fear thoughts, by persistent carelessness in the selection of food, by refusal to give your body its necessary supplies of water, air, light, and rest. If your deeds give the lie to your words, the suggestion that reaches and affects your inner consciousness is the suggestion of your actions, not that of the statements you have learned from some book or teacher. Subconsciousness is controlled from the level of self-conscious awareness. This takes us back to the Charioteer keeping his consciousness within and operating without. And then seeing and being aware of what's going on around him. And you have to have a practice of quiet in your life in order to see the life around you. Otherwise, it's just again and again, I like, I don't like, I like, I don't like, tossing you about. So let's see how this philosophy is supported by the card through its color and symbols. The woman in Key 8 is the High Priestess of Key 2, memory. She's the Empress Key 3, duplication. She's also the woman in the Lover's Key 6, right discrimination. Key 8 represents the human aspect of subconsciousness. She controls the functions of every organ in the body. Again, we don't jump inside our bodies. and direct our bloodstream and our heart pumping and our lungs breathing. This is all done through the subconscious. She directs the currents of prana, the vital energy or life breath. She has a crown of flowers. This hints that we are concerned with organic processes. Flowers are the reproductive organs of the plant kingdom. And a crown, any crown, always represents will in the tarot, in the Kabbalah. Here we come to the Hebrew letter Teth, T or TH. The Hebrew letter Teth means snake, as referring to the coiled serpent power. So we have here sovereignty having to do with intelligent control of that aspect of the serpent power, the kundalini, which runs up your spine, and the nervous center that moves everything through your body on a subconscious level. We have the horizontal figure 8 over her head, just like the magician, which is the card directly above her in the Tarot Tableau. So she is subject to his influence. She represents subconscious reaction to the principle that he personifies, attention. This key appears to be a development of the lilies and roses in the garden of the magician. Paying attention. So important. If you can't pay attention to something because your mind is wandering around doing I like, I don't like, you can see how you can continuously trip yourself up. The yellow in the background indicates mental equilibrium and intellect. And you've seen this on many of the other cards, especially the Fool card. The green earth upon which she and the lion stand is indicative of growth. Harmony and the planet Venus have to do with green. And green is the color of love in the tarot. So the foundation of the picture is love. What the characters stand on is the foundation. Two violet mountains in the background represent wisdom and understanding. Violet indicates spiritual power and truth, so they're represented here. And the mountain's presence intimates that some attainment has been achieved at this point. She stands and is shown controlling all the forces of nature below the human level, which is represented by the lion. Her pure white garment represents the purified aspect of subconsciousness. This is the result of intelligent application of the law, that it is at all times amenable to control by suggestion. White stands for divine unity. So that's the mode of consciousness you have to be in to have this work for you. It's an emblem of purity and innocence. It is a personal realization that all is one. Once again, we go back to understanding attention, which is necessary for concentration, previously to attempting meditation. Quieting the mind, meditating, getting to the point where you're quiet, totally quiet, outside of the city, quote, all the activity of the planet. The chain of roses that surround both the woman and the lion represents a figure 8, a symbol of eternity. Roses represent desire. The chain of roses represents desires woven together, rightly cultivated and combined, and thus the most potent form of suggestion. These suggestions, in harmony with the real nature of things, enable us to dominate the mighty forces of nature below the human level, which is all the animal kingdom, all the elements. But you have to come from above them. You cannot be tossed and turned by them. And this card represents that. Rightly cultivated. So that is the discrimination of your mind that is necessary. What do you want to think today? What do you want to watch on TV? What do you want to listen to on the radio? All of these things are recorded fully by the subconscious mind as reality. And it does not discriminate between where you focus your mind and what you wish you were doing. It just records, and something you feel emotional about, it will deliver to you. Ah, the King of Beasts. I love this lion's face because it's red, but the eyes are blue and luminous. The red lion, King of Beasts, is a symbol of the highest forms of development in the kingdoms of nature below the level of man. In Key 8 is shown the positive and constructive application of the law of suggestion in the work of personal regeneration. This is transforming yourself totally. It's like being at the altar and having the transformation take place from the bread and the wine into the body and blood of Christ. This is where you're going to transform your entire vehicle so it can receive more light. So you have to do it through the mind, directing the subconscious through subtle suggestion. This can only occur with the introduction of an impulse proceeding from what is symbolized by the magician, who is the self-conscious mind. The beginning steps in the great work require the exercise of a very definite personal will on your part, without apparent immediate results. Do not be discouraged. Yeah, the lion will eat you if you're not careful. The great work. As you progress in your efforts, you will build up the realization that the great work is not accomplished by personal effort at all. Oh my, what have you been talking about? Please note how relaxed the woman is, how ferocious the lion is. The great magical agent is already set in motion and established. This is another webinar. We can discuss that and where that idea and concept comes from. It's very simple, but we will have to do this another time. So it's already set in motion and established. It's kind of like getting on a moving train. You just have to learn to step on. It's just that the greater number of human beings experience the consequences of its negative operation because they do not know how to reap the benefits of its positive use. It has to do with application and understanding, not that it's not there. Seeing through appearances. This is very important. The most valuable lesson you can learn is seeing through appearances and the consequent discovery of the one reality veiled by them. Don't make the mistake of being sentimental or emotional. This is a mental suggestion. Look deliberately for the good and beautiful in everyone. It is there if you have eyes to see. Thus you will help yourself by telling the truth about all men and women. The power of your thought will be of great benefit to those on whom you turn it. This is your strength. So here we are at the end of the webinar. And if you have questions, we have time to discuss anything you've seen.
Margot, if I may.
Oh, certainly.
I never really looked at the tableaus before, and that fascinates me. Could we discuss the overall generality of the tableau setup?
Okay. Well, you can arrange the cards in so many ways. I think it's over a billion ways or a million ways. The initial tarot tableau is arranged in the 3 rows with the 7 columns. It's like the beginning, the starting of understanding the principles, the agencies through which those principles work and operate, and the results. And so those are the columns. So you have 7 columns.
Could you flip to that?
You want to know what the different? Okay. Let's see.
I wanted to have another look at that. I'm sure that you'll post it and I can study it further.
Okay, let me go back. There you go. So you have actually 7 steps here. And what we're covering are what's known as bondage, which is the first column. So there are 7 columns here. Awakening is the 2nd column. Revelation is the 3rd, which starts with the Empress. The next one, which starts with the Emperor, is organization. That would make sense. The 5th column is regeneration, and the 6th column is realization. The last one is cosmic consciousness. So down there on card number 21, the world, on the lower right-hand corner, that's cosmic consciousness. Each one of these principles has been discussed by us in the last several months, and how they operate in our lives. So we've just covered the principles. And the beauty of this is when you stare at one of these cards, or you place, say, one of the columns together, and once we've covered all of the cards and gotten into them, you can then go back, and what you've done is you've placed all this information in your subconscious mind. Though I will add, this is not complicated, I will add that you're working with the self, and the self knows all this already. Your inner self knows all about this. And I'm just here to remind you, there's nothing new on the planet. There's all of this is completely understood by your inner self, which is why you want to get in touch with your inner self. You want to take a shortcut on learning all of this, which is why you meditate. It's just astounding. I'll place a card in front of myself, and then I'll go, oh, I never saw that. Oh, that works with this card doing blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this is the initial way to view the cards. So if you have a problem that you're working on, or something that you don't feel like you can get over, or something you want to manifest more in your life, once you know what each of the cards, its primary function is, you can make an arrangement of 2 cards or 1 card or 5 cards and place them in front of yourself. And guess who you're influencing? The subconscious mind. You're it's like getting the juices going on a much higher level. And you, the director, who's placed the cards in front of yourself, is directing your mind to do this. There's something that I came across not too long ago. I shared this with Sue, which is something about getting your subconscious mind to do and operate the way you want it to, and yet you filled it with all of these inaccuracies over your lifetime, and they reappear. And since these 2 keys talk about the subconsciousness, on how to get a handle on it so it produces what you want, I'm going to read you this, since we have a little time. I'm going to read you this one short paragraph, and it's called Speak Directly to the Subconsciousness, as if to another person, and say, quote, henceforth, you are free from the influence of any misinterpretations of appearances that may result from the inaccurate operation of my conscious thinking. You will refuse to accept any such misinterpretations, and you will be guided by the influx of superconscious life and wisdom. Under this influence, you will set my body in perfect order. Through this wisdom, you will guide me aright in all my affairs. And by the reflection of this boundless power into my personality, you will give me ability and strength to accomplish all that I have to do. This is called a magical formula.
Can you send that to me?
Yes, it's great. I say it in the mornings like, how did that happen to me? Okay, the subconscious mind is accountable to us. We covered that. And it wants to do everything, but then we go around and we have all this negative thinking that we either pick up from people around us or our own selves, as in things didn't work. So I'll recite this. Okay, subconsciousness, you got to get your act together. You're producing things I don't want. So now you need to not follow what I've said before, because it was an error. Remember, sinning in the tarot is missing the mark. This is where that comes in. So there's lots more to cover. Yeah.
So on these 7 columns, if we could say again, the first one was bondage.
Yes.
And then awakening.
Then awakening is the next one.
What was the third one?
Revelation.
Revelation.
The next one is organization.
Right. Then generation.
Organization, and then regeneration, realization, and then cosmic consciousness.
They seem to kind of follow the solar initiations in a way.
Yes, I know. And another thing about the cards, though, in this format, is that when you go through a lifetime, you come back, you start again with the Fool, you're the self, with your baggage, which is that little red package at the end of the pole, and you're about to do it again. So you come in carrying what you've learned on a spiritual level as to how to control your subconscious mind. And you see the little intellect, the little white dog, my favorite little dog, running along the side, will be there to help you. But your real change happens by understanding the principles we discussed today. Those 2 cards, having them together, is just phenomenal. First, the victory card, which I love, which is card 7, and then coming into what makes you strong. What is the application of all that attention from the magician? And your strength comes in by being able to be in control of all the elements below where we are. This is the Pythagorean triangle, actually, the upper right-hand side of it. You have the elements, the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, then you have man, and then you have Superman. And when you're on this path, we're heading to that point of the next consciousness, which is the Superman, the person who can form from the elements anything he wants, including recreating and regenerating his own body through the mind. And she's relaxed. The strength card, just look at her. She's just totally calm. It's a struggle to get to that point because you have to use discrimination. And when you're in the world, this isn't taught in high school. Okay? And nobody hands you a little, like when you buy a new toy or you buy something new that's electronic or computer or TV set, it comes with directions. You land here, the Fool, the breath of God, without directions. They are there. Everything you need to know is within you, but they've taken all the signposts away. It's like going to Italy and you go to a crossroads and all the roads point to Rome. All the signs point to Rome. Left, right, behind you. It's like, okay. So there we have it. Or any more questions?
Well, thank you very much. This is great.
For me, it's a lot of fun. I'm glad that you guys are showing up still so we can do this. I find that many people actually do watch this at a later time because it doesn't work with their schedule. So the 4 of you coming every time, it makes it wonderful because it allows me to do this so that there are many other people that are listening to the webinars.
Great. And next time it's the Hermit, right?
Yes, the Hermit and the Wheel of Fortune.
All right. We'll look forward to that.
Okay.